Karl, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on. How are
Thank
you
you, Lee.
doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for the invite. I'm very much looking forward to having a chat with you.
So, kicking off season two, big pressure.
Yeah, well, no, it's like after you've won the trophy, innit?
So, for those who are not aware of yourself and your story, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and who is Karl?
Oh, blimey, who is Carl? Probably the Carl you see today is very different from the Carl of 4 years ago, but I need to go back a bit further to come forward, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I good job bringing as a kid, loving parents. I started out. I failed my A levels at 16 and decided 18, sorry, and decided I didn't want to carry on. So I went off to work for a well-known supermarket that no longer exists called Quick Save, and spent 2 or 3 years there. But in the background, my mum and dad are both teachers, both retired teachers now. My dad was a secondary school maths teacher. My mum was a primary teacher. I would say they actively discouraged me perhaps from teaching because they know how hard it is. But
Yeah.
yeah, but they never sort of didn't support me, and through doing some voluntary work in schools in Birmingham where I grew up, and basically really falling in love with it for myself, I decided to take myself to night school, as it were, back in the day, and did a BTEC National in Business and Finance, which secured me a place in Trinity College, Carmarthen, as it was then.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, so back to my Welsh roots because my parents were from Wales as well and stuff like that. So yeah, so
Must have been
really,
good people then.
oh, very good people. Yeah, they even let me cheer on for it. No, they were very good
Oh,
actually. Although a Welsh, although an Englishman from Birmingham trying to learn Welsh to teach in Wales is a very interesting challenge, I have to say.
yeah. Take my hat off to you there.
But yeah, so that was a little bit, and then obviously I went to Trinity for 4 years. Did well, I don't even know if they still exist today, but did the good old fashioned Bachelor of Education with
Yeah.
geography as my main, specialist in 7 to 11, and yeah, was very fortunate. Graduated in '98, got a job at a small primary school in Mid Wales. Set up home there, and after 4.5 years there, I moved into special education, and that's
Wow.
where I spent the rest of my teaching days, 13 and a half years, at a 3 to 19 through special needs school in Brecon again. So that was an incredible journey,
I was going to say quite the journey.
a huge journey. I mean, it was never, I, I'd always had an interest in special education, and where I worked in primary, we were very blessed in that we were a satellite school for the school I worked at secondly, and they came and they bring some students out, and I was fortunate to have a student or two in my class with their support staff, and the opportunity presented itself. I mean, I didn't have any particular background in special education other than it just really interested me, so I went for it and got it, and I stayed there for the rest of my teaching career.
So you're happy with
Started
that
as a
decision then?
I was, yeah. It was a very tough time when I had to leave, but we'll probably come on to that more later. And I, looking back, didn't deal with it very well. In fact, I didn't really deal with it until I fully had my, for want of a better word of calling it, worst mental episode. I
Mhm.
don't know if that's a very good way to put it, but you know what
Oh,
I
I
mean.
think that's
Um,
pretty fair.
so yeah, but I absolutely loved the opportunities it afforded me, the privilege to work with children who, despite everything, have such a positive outlook on life.
Yeah.
Um, I never thought there'd see a day where I was working in a school and I'd have to deal with grief, um, loss of a pupil overnight, even at one point, which really hit me hard, loss of a member of staff overnight.
It's
I don't
tough.
think anything can
Yeah.
prepare you for things like that, but the head who I used to work with, and he's taught all in way. He was a brilliant head teacher. and his attitude was that the ethos of the school was team, dead simple. Together, everybody achieves more, and we were like a community. And his beliefs were we want to put this school on the map. We were known as the school behind the theatre, where the I had to say it, and I probably get where the kids that can't cope in mainstream go, but we were not that. And anyone who came, I think, walked away with a completely different outlook on education, on children, and also the fact that, you know, I perhaps can say it more freely now. I'm not in education anymore, but I think we're too boxed into one size fits all. Pressures of getting results, SATs, whatever it may be, and we fail to see the teachers don't. I take my hat off to anyone, but we fail to see the individuality sometimes of the children within, because we're not allowed to. It's nobody's fault.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's quite easy for us to label kind of specialist settings as well as behavioral units and that kind of thing.
That's
But
right. EBD, you know, whatever it might be.
And it's far from that, you know. And I do think it takes a special kind of person to work in those settings and those environments. It's not certainly not something that everyone can do, and I don't think every teacher can do either.
No, I used to think so, but I think I was always, I'm just doing my job. And I think in the last 4 years, I've had to really self-evaluate me, because along the journey, I've realized that validly, I used to believe that I was all right as long as everybody else was all right, but I didn't actually realize what I was contributing, because my mum would say I've never been someone that's coveted attention or wanted anything that anyone else wants, because I don't. I just like helping other people, I suppose, which is why I guess I ended up in teaching. And I wouldn't change my life at all, because although it's had some really tough parts, I'm here today, and I'm doing something I'm really excited to be doing today, which is talking to you. And you have to get through the tough times to have the nice times, for want of a better way of looking at it.
Yeah. So would you say you were the kind of person who puts other people first?
Definitely.
And looks after their needs above your own?
Yeah. I could tell you lots of stuff. I mean, I I don't know whether I won't touch on it, because obviously I had some when I was a teenager, I suffered some abuse, unfortunately, and I don't know whether that has contributed to, I looked at myself perhaps differently afterwards. I didn't disclose it for a long time because I just didn't, because I didn't think anyone believed me, for starters. But yeah, but I think overall, yeah, I was the oldest of 6 or 7 cousins, loving family. I guess I've always had that inner nature. My heart wants to see the best in everybody. And perhaps sometimes it's been to my detriment, because sometimes you can overhelp a person, maybe.
Yeah.
Or you have to know when to step back, but that only comes with experience, like life does. So, but yes, I would say, I mean, say, for example, I know you like your sport. I'm a, dare I say it, on a recording, a Birmingham City fan. And
could be worse.
Back in the day, yeah, tell me about it. Back in the day, I used to think that, and I looked at it a lot with my psychiatric nurse, but just one quick analogy is I used to think if I worked hard all week, helped as many people as I could, tried to get to the bottom of my list, then my football team might win on a Saturday. That was how my head was working. Nuts, isn't it? I know I'm nuts, but anyway, as the mental health nurse said, he said, and this was quite hard to take coming from a Villa fan, but he turned around and said to me, well, actually, he said, well, it's a great belief, but he said, let's be honest, that was just making it worse, because they never win anyway.
I was going to say, you need some divine intervention.
But you could, yeah, exactly. but it's only in the last 2 years that I've really, really allowed myself to. Somebody said to me once, you're going to you're so kind to other people, but you don't like yourself. And I actually know that was true. I didn't like myself.
And I think, there will be a lot of people listening who are maybe in that kind of mode of thinking as well, of putting other people before themselves. Yeah,
Yeah,
good people do. They look after people, they show kindness, and they're always there for support, but at the detriment to themselves. And I
I
think,
agree.
especially on Twitter now, we speak a lot about loving yourself and looking after yourself and things. But I think looking back for me, you're talking only a few years ago, I probably wouldn't have paid as much attention to myself as I should have, especially in my teaching career. I didn't look after myself very well
No.
at all. I was really bad at it. And it's only now, since experiencing poor mental health and really reflecting upon myself, and reading a lot about self-care and those kind of things, that I know how to look after myself.
Yeah, you do.
Um,
I think when you touch on the reading, that is one of the things that I found, as you know, or you might not know, but it'll sort of come up in the conversation later. I unfortunately had to spend a, a period of time in prison. And for a few years before that, I'd fallen out of love with reading because of the state I was in and all the rest of it. And I picked up books in prison that I'd have never read, and they've changed my life forever. And some of them are self-help, and it's about um, being prepared to put yourself first and getting out of the focus where I think, even now with Twitter, I might think, oh, if I don't do a Carl's contemplation, are people going to think less of me? And
mm,
actually, you have to flip the narrative and say, I'll do it when when I'm ready and when I can do it, because they're not ringing me up saying, where's your next Carl's contemplation or
mm,
whatever.
yeah,
It's really, when you've been a caregiver all your life, I'm coming up to 50 this year. It's really hard to flip the narrative and put yourself first. Because if anyone ever rang me, I would try and be there.
mm,
Now, I've actually said no a couple of times, and it's not no in a horrible way. It's, well, actually, Lloyd, I'd love to do the podcast, but I can't do it this week.
yeah,
That's not selfish. That's self-care.
absolutely. It's
And
those
if we don't,
boundaries, isn't
and
it?
selfish doesn't start with self, does it? It's selfish, as in being selfish to yourself, but you shouldn't be. You should be self-caring, because if you can't do that to yourself, then you can't ever help anybody else.
Yeah.
And I think what I've learned is that, and I don't get me wrong, I'm not great at it, but I'm getting better. But life's a journey.
Hmm.
And people say, oh, do you want to get back to who you were? No, I don't want to get back to who I was, because um, I'm a different person now because I've got my diagnosis and everything else. But to me, when people use the word recovery, I like that, but it's not recovering back to who you were. It's recovering for the rest of your life. Um, and we're all in recovery in a way for
Yeah.
various things we've been through. And I don't see it as getting to an end, because I was chatting to somebody recently, said, well, once you get to the end, that's your final destination. And without being blunt, he said, once you get to your final destination, you're not going to be here anymore.
Mm,
And it
yeah.
really hit home, because I thought, well, why am I rushing to get to Z when I could have, when I'm on and I just imagine myself now on this little train track, and whatever I am, whether it's a good or a bad stop, it's just a stop along the way. But I don't want to get to the final destination. I mean, I'll be honest, I wanted to take my own life. I tried 3 times to take my own life. Now, looking back, I accept that. I'm not proud of it, but if I can use my voice to help other people. And it was because I just didn't think I had a purpose, lots and lots of things.
But coming, you saying there that you're not proud of it, but I've never been in that situation, but from speaking to people who have, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you're in that state where that is your goal, that is what you want to do,
Yeah.
and there'll be very little that can maybe
And
change your
I
mind, or
was
you can think differently.
exactly, I was so locked in. And I think people say, let's talk. And, you know, I've talked to people who've lost family and friends to suicide. I know I'm a lucky one because I found a way through. Um, and you can't really offer words of comfort, because grief is so different to everybody. But from my own experience, I mean, I had I've got family, I've got children. Um, I wasn't really thinking about them, and I'm not so sure now in hindsight it was whether I wanted to end my life, more the fact that I couldn't stop the locked in madness of my head.
Mhm.
I just felt so trapped at the voices, the you're no good, you're a failure, you failed at teaching because your mental health made you retire. And it would go on and on like this. And it was 24/7. And it was just like a war within my head,
So it's
every
the
single
end
day.
of the pain and the
Yes.
intrusive thoughts,
Yeah.
and maybe not feeling good
Just to make
enough.
it stop. Yeah.
So it's not the end of that, it's the ending of that hurt.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you know, I think unless you've been in that situation, uh,
No.
you have no idea of how hard and how tough it is. So I understand that you say you're not proud of it, but at the same time, that was you then, and that was
That's the point.
best kind of outcome for yourself.
Yeah. And I think looking back, um, it was a very telling experience the day I tried to take my life for the third time. And I won't go into in detail, but I ended up, there was this little light that wouldn't leave me alone. And I'd driven to a wood to take an overdose. And there's this little light that wouldn't leave me alone. I couldn't finish it. And I knew that I was going to have to, I don't know. There was just something. And I went home, and that day my life changed forever. And I was asked to, well, I left home that day because of various other things. Nobody's fault. My family probably saved my life by asking me to leave, and I'm always grateful for that. I don't hold grudges. You know, I've made mistakes. I think it's about ownership. It's for other people to decide whether what I've been through is right or wrong. I'm just me, and I think you can't move forward until you look in the mirror and actually say, "Yeah, all right. Maybe I don't agree with everything that's happened to me, but I'm not going to use anything as an excuse for the path I've walked." Um, you have to embrace that, and in that accepting moment, you can actually say, "Well, actually, now I can use those lived experiences, hopefully, to keep myself going and help others." And remain humble, because at the end of the day, the greatest gift we've got is while we've still got hope in our hearts and air in our lungs, we've still got a chance to be all right.
And as you've described life being that journey, I think reflection on your past and the lessons that we're taught is a huge part of that, isn't it?
It
And
is.
whether people look at certain situations and judge other people, that's up to them. And I think what you have to do as an individual is what's right for you, isn't it? And it's
Yeah,
trying to focus on you, your journey, and not allow others' judgments to impact on that.
that's right, which is really hard sometimes. But
Absolutely.
what I'd say to that is, if you can do that the majority of the time, I mean, I try at the end, I have something called, I do a free thoughts of gratitude at the end of each day, where I'll just sit down before I get to bed and I might write them out or think about them, because however tough life is, there is always something, a little bit of something there at the end of each day. Even when I was at my worst, I could just be like grateful I was still here.
Mm.
You know, it doesn't have to be some all singing, all dancing kind of, oh, I've done this, I've done that, I'm wonderful. Da, da. I don't think life is like that. I think
It's
we all know that.
powerful, the
It's
gratitude
powerful.
aspect.
It's
Uh,
hugely. I mean, I absolutely buy into gratitude and giving thanks. And I won't, it's done in a way where you know the value of the or the effort. I like to think I've seen the effort that that person's made to put themselves out there or
mm.
share that story or whatever it might be. So my gratitude really comes from within, because it's a motivator to keep going. Other people motivate me as much as I motivate myself now.
Mm. And it changes your mindset hugely. Looking for the positives in your day. Though, like you
Yeah,
said, it's those small things, and if you can look for those small things, and it's going to have such a positive impact. I
it's
think,
a brilliant one.
yeah, I believe there's research into, what people when they look back on their life, what they remember the most and what they will miss the most.
Mm.
And it wasn't those big grand gestures, and it wasn't those big trips places and things. It was the small things, those little details, those little connections.
It's even things as small as the person who stopped in the park one day and asked me if I was okay, and I didn't even know them, and we had a
Yeah.
conversation, and he probably doesn't know it because I've never seen him again, but he changed my complete outlook for that day because he took the time to ask if I was okay, and he really asked, not just, "Oh, are you okay?" And I think there's a lot to be done. Again, coming back to I was talking to someone yesterday about the two okay. Well, it was yourself as well. Two okay rule. You can say, "Are you okay?" and then you move on. Now, that's the most important question you're ever going to ask anyone, I think. So give them a chance to answer
Yeah.
before you go on with, "Oh, I've had a terrible day." Blah, 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 blah. It's not about, you're not asking if they're okay so that you can tell them your story. If you're really asking if they're okay, you want to know if they are okay.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason for asking it in the first place.
Yes, paying
So
attention to what they give back to you.
exactly. So I was watching, and I heard about, I saw this documentary, a couple of years back from Roman Kemp, and he's brought a
Good
book
one.
out now. Are you really okay? And it's such a, are you okay? And if they don't answer, just say, no, are you really okay? And they called it on the documentary the two okay rule, I think.
It was
And
the group of boys, wasn't it?
that's right. It was such a power, and it was males as well. It was so, and it's like almost saying, well, actually, you might go, yeah, I'm okay. Because well, I'm
Yeah, I'm
sure
all
women
right.
do
I'm
it too, but
fine.
it's what us blokes
Yeah.
tend to, yeah, I'm okay. Did you see the football? Let's get off that topic of how I
Yeah.
am really quickly, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Well, actually, I really want to tell you, but I'm not because I'm weak and I'm a man and all this stuff, all the stereotypical responses. And to just say, are you okay? And then I'll come back now and I'll say, if I said to you, are you okay now? And you went, yeah, I'd come back and say, actually, Lloyd, you're really okay. And then I'd address you personally like that and just wait. I can't keep getting you okay, you okay, you okay, because eventually I've got to believe you because you might not be ready to tell me. But by asking twice, I think it opens up the idea in my mind or another person's mind. Actually, I might tell Lloyd next time I'm not as okay as I'm presenting this morning,
And I
or
think
whatever it
that's
might
where
be.
stereotypically females generally are that much better at
I
it
read something
because,
once. I read something once about, if you sent 10 men that didn't know each other and 10 females that didn't know each other to exactly the same pubs, but same staff pretty much, but in two different places. At the end of the night, if you were doing like a social experiment, at the end of the night, the women would know so much more personal, real stuff about each other than the men, because we'd be like, UK, and we get onto football. We wouldn't be brave enough to ask the real questions.
the men
And it
couldn't tell
really
you
hit.
three things probably.
No, what did you learn tonight? But I think Lloyd supports. It's just we're different, aren't we?
We'd
But
be happy just to have a name.
yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Who's he?
Oh, I
But
forgot.
I think we've got a lot to learn from. I don't know how you felt with teaching, but I think it's been a journey for me. But I'll be honest, I do relate. I don't have a huge friendship circle, but it's important that those that are in my circle really know me. So I don't want anyone to walk with me if they don't agree with me or know my story. But I think working in we both were in teaching, and we still fell foul of mental health as it were. But I think working in a more female environment, I think maybe I've got that more of a nurturing side, because most of my positive role models growing up and even today are female, which is why I'm really glad to be on here, because even in the Twitter community, I don't think as many men engage in mental health chats as women do.
No,
It's
that's
just
right.
a fact.
Yeah, and I think apart from there's a handful, including yourself, of males within our kind of area of interest, I suppose, if you want to put it that
Yeah,
way, and areas of discussion. Like I said, it's dominated by females, and even in those exchanges, it's really clear to us that they are more open. even in those exchanges online. I know,
Definitely.
we try to be as open as we can, and like we're on here today, we're telling our story, but there's still that huge barrier and stigma, and just there's a lot of work to be done around
Huge amount.
men's mental
Yeah,
health. There has been progression. We can see that there is more work being done, but I think unless you were in it and trying to impact it in a positive way, and really do all you can, I don't think you realize how far behind we still are and how much work there is to be done. From the
agreed.
outside,
Yeah,
people will see, oh, there's progress, there's more talking, and it's more prominent on social media and things like that. But that's the surface. That's just that
the
shell that you can
statistics
see.
don't lie, do they? At the end of the day, and you look
No,
at the
that's right.
number of male suicides, and yeah, no, it's scratched the surface. It's like I said, we can all use a hashtag mental health matters, but I've asked myself a lot of questions, and when in the last 6 months, I've really come on a long way, and it's like, yeah, I want to see change, but I have to step out of my comfort zone sometimes. If I really believe and want to see the change for men, which I do, then I've got to be prepared to say yes to something like this, because
Yeah.
if people can put a name to me or face to me, whatever it might be, now that I'm talking, now that I feel I do have a voice, we've all got a voice. It's just finding the people that will encourage you to use it, isn't it? And the support I've had along the way. I say I've got my 3 Fs: my family, my friends, and my faith. And as long as I'm talking and using those 3, I'll get through. And I've met some incredible people along the way. Lots and lots of stories I could tell. But I think you have to, the way I see it now is, some people are still in my life, some people are not, but everybody who's crossed my path has crossed my path at the right time for a very specific reason. And coming back to gratitude, even people that perhaps I've fallen out with, or not that I've fallen out, because I'm not that kind of guy, but you know what I mean? People like you lose
Yeah.
touch with, whatever. I'm grateful for everybody who's ever had any input into my life, because they've made me the person I am sat here talking to you today, which has allowed me to say, yeah, I'm going to come on and talk about male mental health and awareness. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for everyone that's ever walked beside me, really.
And that's it's really important. You touched upon there about not necessarily that you've fallen out with, but you do lose relationships along the way. People change, situations change, and you do then, coming back to on being on that journey, you do find other people
Yeah.
along the way who you connect with and who will impact on you. When I was having counseling, a lady asked me, "What do you want to get from this?" And I said,
Question.
yeah, I said, I want to be myself. I want myself back." She went, "Okay." I thought, oh, that's the wrong answer there, isn't it? Right. She went, "Your old self. Do you want an improved version of you?" I was like, "Well, I wouldn't mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great."
World class football, that
Like
would be a good
I'm
start.
ordering from a catalogue or something. And, yeah, I like the
Yeah.
idea of that. But she
Age
said,
79.
yeah, she said something that just stuck and was, "Well, if you had your old self back, that really wasn't working too well for you, was it?" And I thought, yeah, I suppose that's why you were there and I'm here. But it was that realization of, well, yeah, I want to get back to my old self, but hang on, my old self has brought me here. I'm sitting in this chair because of my old self, whether that be for external
Yeah.
factors impacting me, or my inability to talk about my emotions and to put other people first. All that kind of stuff has just gone, and I'm here.
Yeah. But I think that's really important. We can have regret and we can look back, but you can look back but still face forwards, if that makes sense. And the way I sit there is, as long as I'm facing forwards, it doesn't matter if I'm making a step forward today or I'm just staying where I am. But it was only really, again, in prison when I thought I can either regret what I've done, or I can let the guilt for what I've done, or on my mental health, I felt guilty for being the person I was. It's not all about the prison sentence, guilty for lots and lots and lots of things. Or I can say, yeah, I can always regret those bits of me, but they've still made me the person I am today. And I need to use those regrets to keep going, to keep flying, to keep whatever it is, and say, yeah, that was me. But we're all on a journey, whether you sail through life, whether you storm waters come once a week, whatever. I don't know from one day to the next how I'm going to wake up, because I've got a diagnosis of recurrent depressive disorder. So I could be on top of the world today, not hyper kind of top of the world. I'm not at that extreme, which I'm quite glad of. But I could wake up tomorrow and struggle to get out of bed, because I still all have all the doubts and the fears we're talking about. It's just that I've perhaps realized that I'm allowed to have them. I've given myself permission to have them, rather than say, oh my God, I can't do this, that, and the other, or whatever, and I'm going to let so and so down because I haven't tweeted, or I can't go to someone for dinner, or I can't do the podcast day. And actually, if you're just honest and open with people for the right reasons, then those that you want to walk beside will walk with you. And if people don't like me, I have no issue with that. I will judge anyone. I don't judge anyone, I would say. I just try and be who I am. If I was chatting to you, or I was chatting to, I might go, if it was a famous footballer, I might go, oh, but I'd still be me, because I am me. And that's the most powerful 3 words I was taught in prison. I am me. I can't be what I'm not, but I can learn to mold myself into a better version of myself, who perhaps cares a little bit more for me, which then allows me to do all the things I want to do, but in an even better way.
Yeah, I love that. Showing yourself the kindness you would show your friends, and treating yourself how you would treat those. We can be too harsh on ourselves, and we judge ourselves more than what we do other people.
And it's other people's opinions, isn't it? Opinions are just opinions. Facts are facts. That's
look, Karl, and you've touched upon the fact of experiencing poor mental health and mental illness. When did that kind of become apparent to you, or when did you start to experience those kind of episodes?
That's a really good question, and I think I'd answer it differently now that I've looked back, because of where I am today. I'd say I was quite a young, anxious child. My mum's told me stories of when I travelled to Cardiff to see my grandparents, that I'd worry about the train I was catching home. But I had a really good upbringing. My family life, as I said before, was really good. I think perhaps I became perhaps slightly more inwards after the abusive episode I experienced as a teenager, because I wanted to protect everybody else. Threats were made to my brother, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I've always had times when I felt down, but I just thought it was life, I suppose. Until
were you ever encouraged to express your emotions? Were you ever brought up in that kind of open environment, or was it quite a closed, shut off? We don't really do that here.
Probably, I would say, and this isn't being disrespectful to my parents, it was a different age. It was, the 80s, kids were still more kids, and it was like go out and play or whatever it might be. I wouldn't say it didn't discourage me. I wouldn't say it discouraged me from talking, but perhaps I didn't really understand what I was going through at the time. So how can you talk about something you don't understand? Maybe would be a better way looking at it. I'd also encourage others to tell me how I was feeling, but I guess I've always had that inner feeling until recently, that if everyone else was okay, I was okay. Now that, I think, came after what happened to me, and I was like, well, I've just got to get on with it. I've got to be okay. Obviously, this has happened for a reason. I'm a bad person, whatever it might be. And yeah, I guess I shut that part of me off, maybe even. I didn't disclose it until I was 46, 47. Yeah, looking back on it, it's made a huge impact on my life, and I've had to go through various treatments to actually forgive myself, because I blame the young version of me when there was nothing you could have done anyway for many years. So yeah, I think in that side you do lose a part of you. I would say that the treatments I've had and the support I've had, I say that the care and friendships and family I've got now have unlocked a part of the heart that I felt was chained and dead, because I couldn't have done anything different with what happened to me. There's no point in blaming me anymore, because even if I knew what I knew now, I wouldn't have known it then, so I couldn't have done it differently.
No,
it's a sort of
that's right.
reverse psychology. It's just I'm an older, perhaps some might say wiser, others might not, person, so I can accept that, yeah, for whatever reason he felt he needed to do that. That's his problem or issue, not mine. I don't hold it against him.
That takes a lot of strength on your part, is to have that outlook on such a horrendous situation that should never have happened. No,
I'm not saying he should have done it, and I don't think anyone should ever be in that position. But for me personally, some people find forgiveness perhaps easier than others. I mean, I have a lot of I was brought up a practicing Christian, and the fact it happened in a church environment was very difficult to deal with. But I put it to one side. I mean, it was the 80s. I didn't want to make a fuss. My parents were teachers, lots of different things. And I got on with life, I suppose. And I remember, I'll never forget what my psychiatric nurse said to me in my first counselling session. And he said, I wish I could tell you that you're the only one who comes in 40s with this kind of experience, but sadly you're not. It's something that we have to get better at acknowledging. And it was when he said, you have to accept that you were a victim of abuse, that hit home. And at the time that was enough. But because it happened in a closed environment, when I was sent to prison and the doors on the cell locked every night, I started to have really bad flashbacks. I couldn't get out, couldn't go for a walk. You can't do anything in prison unless you've got permission. And I finally made a decision in prison to ask for help, to forgive myself. So I reported it when I was in prison. And that was a very emotional time for me, but also a cathartic time. I'm not afraid to show tears anymore, because that's just who I am. And it was right for me at that moment. But what I would say is, you should never feel you should have to do anything until you can do it. But if you can reach out, whether it be like a phone call, a text, we tell each other to talk, but the truth of it is, if somebody hadn't made a phone call for me, I wouldn't be here today. So I'd rather make a phone call if I thought someone was struggling and get a row for it, than not make the phone call and find I was attending their funeral.
Yeah, I think we can underestimate the importance of that one action, can't we?
You see it a lot, don't you, with the TV? Don't get me wrong, what TV companies and everything are doing is brilliant, but let's talk. But unless you've been in a situation where, I don't know, for me personally, I would try to open my mouth and I would try to tell people, and it was almost like a mouth paralysis. I couldn't get it out because I felt so much hate towards myself. I hated myself. I hated who I was. I felt failure. All these things I had going on in my life, and I, look, family, friends, whatever, and I just felt, I could be in a. You heard the analogy a lot. I would be in a room with 100 people, and there was nobody there.
Like, I can't imagine how hard it must have been to take that step. But looking back, would you say is a real breakthrough moment, a real watershed moment that you were able to do that?
Definitely. I mean, it wasn't necessarily about whether the perpetrator was found or identified or whatever. It was just me having a chance to report it. And in fairness, the prison officers who worked with me were brilliant. The police force where it happened actually came all the way up to interview me, which was probably one of the most painful 2 hours of my life, but for emotion. But it was, and I can remember the officer saying, well, what, you know, we have an idea of who it might be, or some words to that effect. We're going to send some photos. We couldn't bring them today because of rules of prison or that. Anyway, and I remember the saying, well, what if it's not the person you think is? Do you want us to get? And I said, no, it's not about necessarily finding the person. It was just that I needed to do this for me, and she was brilliant. They both were, yeah, they did identify who it was, and I was able to identify them. But it wasn't so much about that. It was about that I'd finally allowed the young version of me to have his say. And then I can remember sitting in my cell, there's a bit about in my book, but I can remember saying I'd actually forgiven myself. I wrote a note. I think I put it in the bin afterwards, but I wrote from older Karl to younger Karl, and actually said I was sorry for what I thought of him and how much I loved him and how he couldn't have done anything different, and how I was proud of the fact he carried on with that, and we can all learn and talk sooner. And yeah, it, as you can tell, it does still cut me up now, but I think for me, the only way I can carry on is to forgive, because I can regret it, and I'll know. And people say, "Oh, you can move on from it. You can move on, but you can't forget it, but you can forgive it." It's such an important part of my life that I'll never forget what happened. But I think over time and with the right people and believing in yourself a bit more, I've been able to get to a point where I can say, yeah, I'm accepting of it, and an accepting of it allows you to see it slightly differently. Well, that's how it is for me anyway.
By taking that huge leap, you've allowed yourself to, I suppose, have a certain amount of closure.
Definitely.
And to allow yourself to move forward.
Yeah.
On the next stage of your life.
Yeah, I think until I did that, because there were quite vivid nightmares and stuff, and I think doing that and taking ownership was, once I told somebody about him, he couldn't haunt me anymore, because it wasn't just like haunting him of me, if you see what I mean. Mm. And when I say tell people, a couple of close people are in it, but actually go, because I was offered the chance to report it at the time when I was in therapy, and I said no, I had enough going on. Do you know what I mean? I'd just been arrested, various other things. I was trying to stay alive. But I remember the guy, again, my mental health nurse, saying, if there's ever a time when you know you need to do it, do it. Don't be afraid to do it. Your story is as worthy of being heard as anybody else's, whether it happened yesterday, last month, last year, whenever. And yes, I'm very grateful to him, because he was right. Because when the time was right for me, I did report it, and I'm proud I did.
Absolutely. It takes real strength to speak up about any kind of traumatic situation.
Yes, I think for anyone, whether it, but I think we don't play. There's some brilliant people on Twitter. We don't openly talk about grief enough, and there's lots and lots of things we could do better. And if we can help each other say, actually, it's all right to grieve someone who's gone, you couldn't feel, I think what the people I interact with on Twitter, as long as people have got, I suppose perhaps the same, I wouldn't not interact with anyone, but you find your own kind of communities within Twitter, don't you, for want of a better way of looking at it. And the community I've landed in are amazing people, and are probably one of the main driving points for me being doing this. This is a new phase for me. And I'm really proud of anyone who's ever said a comment, whatever, touches me, because they've taken the time out of their day. You know, and a smile can change 1,000 lives. That's what I believe anyway, if not more.
You're right. There's some really lovely people on Twitter that we've come across and connected with, and you know, when you're speaking to them, it does feel like that you know them to a certain extent, and
it does, because
that
people say, well, why do you do? People have said, oh, why do you do Twitter? And I was like, well, it's a vehicle for my writing, with no pressure. I can share, but also I'm in a newish area for me. I have a couple of really close friends that don't live anywhere near me. I need Twitter friends to get me through a day for positive reasons, because there's things I'll perhaps talk on Twitter about that I wouldn't tell my parents about, because I still want to protect them at the end of the day. So is it friendship in the same way? I think it can be, because you don't have to be seen to be heard. So I don't think I'm any different if I was sending a message to you or I'm talking to you. I try to just be me, because that's all I can ever be. And if in being me it helps another person get through today, then why shouldn't I be proud to be me?
Absolutely. Celebrate you.
So that's the sort of philosophy behind it, if you want to go deep.
But Twitter's the one social media platform, I think, which does allow you to build those connections, which are maybe more than just those superficial elements to it. You look at others, you know, Facebook, I see generally as connect with people you already know,
Yes.
people that you've come across previously from school, things like that, just keeping in touch. Instagram, just snapshots, photos of your life.
I've never
just,
done
you know,
Instagram.
Instagram, is it real? Is it not real? Is that just a highlights reel of everything you've got good that's going on in your life? Whereas Twitter is a bit more real for me, is that you've got real people, you're conversing in real time.
Yes.
And
you can
and you
always
can
get
migrate to people that have similar interests to you and things.
I think you will. And I think, it's, as you said, it's real. It's more real people in more real time. And I mean, you still have to guard against various things, as you know. But I take people at face value. I'd like to think I'm relatively good at working out if they're perhaps not how they present, maybe. I don't know if that, I'm not always right, don't get me, but I have to say the experiences for me on Twitter have been overwhelmingly positive. And I wouldn't be doing this, for example, if I wasn't on Twitter. So it's opened up a platform for me to perhaps use my voice without, having to, don't have to see me to hear me. That's perhaps why I started doing the contemplations, because I do like to talk, as you can probably tell. And but it was a way of talking, but without showing too much of myself, if that makes sense. And
yeah, absolutely.
Just doing a snapshot, it's just a thought. Somebody might, I've done one this morning. A good guy I follow on Twitter called Terry had just said about hope, and I don't have to wait to Christmas to wish you peace and joy. And it's really true. We should want peace and joy for everybody every day. And this thought just popped in my mind. So I recorded it and popped it on, because that's how I'm learning to use it for good for me, most importantly, but good for others as well.
And on that note about, you shouldn't have to wait to say something positive to someone, or wait to wish them good luck, or send them a positive message. I think because of society and culture we may find ourselves in everyday life, especially around men, mental health, and that discussing of emotions, or the lack of discussion around it. Sometimes you see things, and it takes a bit of time for me to register. Like, someone has said that, I said, oh, that's a bit strange. Why is that person said that? But then you think, well, no, it's not strange. It's actually normal. It's nice. It's kind.
Yeah.
But because of, I don't know whether, the
Perhaps
years we got
used
brought
to
up. I think it is. It's because it is completely, and that's what we're so not used to it that it seems odd to start with sometimes.
I
But
know that I know that the person who walked into prison walked out a very different person. I
mm,
still have all the same values and beliefs, but instead of holding back, where I'd have been like, oh, is it all right to compliment so and so on their smile or their tweet or whatever? Now I'm like, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? All right, they can block me, but if they block me, then they don't really know me, because you can be genuine
yeah,
on Twitter or anything else for that matter, whether in life or whatever. I think maybe we're almost too worried to to praise sometimes, and a lot of people don't like praise. Don't get me wrong, I found it very difficult to take on the kindness people have shown towards my book, but I've worked hard enough to know that if I can give others kindness, then I'd be rather ungrateful if I didn't accept it back, wouldn't I?
yeah,
Because that other person's taking the time to say, hey, Carl, this has really helped me. Why shouldn't I be? And that's not about banging the drum and beating your own. I say, one of the reasons I do this is because I look at how mental health, male mental health, mental illness, whatever it's portrayed, and you see these, I've got these like categories in my head, rightly or wrongly. And like, there's some people that are just sort of not looked at them because they're just like that, which is wrong. Then there's the famous people who do a lot of good for it, but it's not, they're not me or you, are they? And then there's sort of, if we were out wishing to, there's people like me and you. It's like, what, you've got kids, you've got a decent job, you just got to get on with it. You're doing really well. You can't have mental illness, or you need to snap out of it, or whatever. And I just think, actually, I just want to be a normal. Well, normal. What's normal? That's another question. A bloke who is comfortable to finally comfortable enough to say, actually, life's really flipping hard being a bloke sometimes. This is what I'm going through. This isn't because I want to go, oh, whoa, Carl, or whatever. This is just how it is. This is how I deal with my mental illness. This is how I walk through life. And if it helps another bloke or female or whatever, great. And if it doesn't, it's helping me anyway. So I'm not going to stop.
yeah. Agree.
And that's how I see it now.
Completely. My first interaction with a doctor about my mental health. I was sent home from work the previous day, got an appointment the next day. Don't know how.
That's good.
A miracle.
Yeah, that was pre-COVID.
Yeah. A few backhanders going on, I think. But the it blows my mind now that the response to me was, what have you got to be down about?
Yeah.
You've got a good job, you've got a young family, lovely wife, and I'm sat there and I'm going, oh. And it's only at the point where I broke down in that chair, I was
Yeah.
crying, that she's gone, oh, well, maybe there is something then. And I'm
I know,
like,
it's awful. She's the doctor.
yeah, I know. Thankfully, my experiences since have been very positive, but
But is it
that
because we
just
are
summed
men?
everything up. Do you
Is
know
it because
that?
we are men now, or is it
Yeah.
because there's still a lot of work to be done, or is it
Mm.
a bit of both? I don't know.
Just that one
But that's why we're
conversation
here
though
today, isn't it?
reinforced all the
Yeah.
stereotypes, all the stigmas, and you just think,
I can remember when after I was retired, it's like, you know, you've had it a couple of years now. You're not well enough to go back to work yet. Like, not
yeah,
something you just sort of give up, is it? Like,
no. I just had my 3-year anniversary of starting medication.
oh, congratulations!
Yeah,
I'm up to well, that's a whole other thing I could talk about. Not necessarily for today, but medication. Should you be on it long term? I have. I mean, I've been on mine for coming up to 8 years now, and the way I see it is, it's a tool, not to be relied on, but it goes alongside my talking therapies and all the rest of it. So why would you give up something that's working? Always
yeah,
monitor it, but you don't have to cope with mental illness by coming off your medication
no,
or whatever. Maybe if you lower your dose, great. I'm not telling anyone to stay on the medication. I just think you have to take every day as it comes, because at the end of the day, yesterday's been, tomorrow never comes, because when it comes, it's today. So live in the moment, and if it's working, do it. And if it's not working, talk about it.
Absolutely. Agreed. I want to talk about your book.
Okay.
And I know because your book is born from your experiences around kind of mental health and being in prison. And it's really prominent as to where you are now and the here and
Yes.
now. So
Yes,
I
it's
think
opened up a lot of opportunity.
it's a really nice opportunity to talk about that and to really, I don't know, show that it's not the end of the world, is it? You know,
It's not.
your experiences don't define you.
No.
They are there as part of you, but to show
Yeah.
there is light at the end of the tunnel as well.
Yeah,
So
I've read a really good quote recently. It's not my own, but it's like, look, everything that the wars inside my head will not define me. They will make me and inspire me. And I think that's really important, because what why it's so, if we try to define people, why are we trying to define people? First of all, why do we build people up to rip them to pieces? I only just come opened up before, this is going back now. I think it must have been, I think it's 3 years ago now. It's before I went to prison anyway. And obviously all the news blew up with Caroline Flack. And that still upsets me pretty much every day, because the treatment she suffered was absolutely disgusting, in my opinion. The amount of hassle she had, and the press coverage, and we seem so intent on building people up and then ripping them down. I don't understand that. And I just think, first of all, that needs to be said, because why can't we just, as you like do on a Thursday, let's be thankful for the people we are and the people we meet, because it's the people we are and the people we meet that keep us going. And you shouldn't want to pull anybody down that helps you stay alive, in my opinion.
yeah,
Maybe that's a bit dark, I don't know.
oh, it's right though that that whole episode with Carl and Flack, it hasn't changed anything.
No, it comes back to the same narrative, doesn't it? We tell people to talk, they don't talk, and then we're like, oh my God, she's bad. I think it's awful. But she was never given a chance to talk because of the hounding she had. Do you know what I mean? It's such a, I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but we seem we're not proactive, we're reactive. I follow a, a, a Twitter feed called The Jordan Legacy, and it's very much about, sadly, a dad who lost his son suicide, or you see the three dads walking. And it's like, we need to be proactive, not reactive. We use like mental health matters a lot as a tweet feed or whatever, and we are getting better at it. But we mention the word suicide, and people are like, I don't know if I can go there. But if we don't talk suicide now while people are alive, how are we ever going to help them stay alive?
Yeah.
So the two sort of go hand in hand for me. It's not, I've got mental health, I'm mentally aware, suicide prevent. It all comes under the umbrella of everybody deserves to have mental well-being.
Mm. And I think it
without
comes
your
down
own
to
mental
education.
well-being, yes, I think it does. And I think we've got a lot of work to be done. And I know there was a bill in Parliament yesterday, wasn't there, for them to, and I think the eyes have moved it on, to have it on the curriculums, because you can hide away from so many different things. I mean, I look at things when I grew up, and the first really, really powerful advertising campaign I remember was AIDS, don't die of ignorance. Now, we're so much more aware of that today, but we have to have difficult conversations to help people. And in a way, that brings me back to the book, because it was almost a conversation with myself, born out of a difficult situation, that's become probably, on a personal note, forgetting like your children and all the things you say, my biggest achievement probably means as much to me as all my years in teaching, because it's so personal to me at that time, and that when I came out and I shared a bit of it with a friend who turned around and said, "It's so good, I'm going to type it up for you." I mean, it was all handwritten when I came out of prison, and people said it needs to be seen. I was like, "Oh, don't be daft," you know. I don't, yeah. But you have to take yourself again out your comfort zone sometimes. So that's sort of what brought it about to publication. But yeah, it was written in 7 months in my final prison.
So, Karl, you wrote that whole book whilst in prison.
Yeah, I spent just under 12 months in prison. Went in during COVID times. I had quite a difficult start. Had to move from the first prison I was in, which was where I was sent down. Within 4 weeks, I was moved to another prison, and then a few weeks after that, I was moved to another prison. All of which was during COVID time. So in each prison, you'd have to repeat your isolation and stuff like that, which I found very difficult. But that's just part of it. You just got to try and get through it. So yeah, I landed at my third prison, HMP Oakwood, which is mentioned in the book. And I got there in June, July, I think it was, around the September time when things started to open up a little bit. I got a orderly job working in a library, and I met some amazing librarians, and that really changed my outlook on life. My experience of prison was nothing, until I went there, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people who've never been on the wrong side of the law, as it were. Somebody asked me recently what was prison to me before I went there, and it was probably the building I walked past as a kid, and I was told, well, that's where naughty people went. And actually, yeah, we've all made a mistake, and I'm not going to say the rights and wrongs of prison, because that's not what it's about. I accept I made a mistake, so I went to prison. That's it. But there are people there who make mistakes, and doesn't necessarily make them bad people. I think you could say perhaps you might have done a thing that was wrong or a bad thing, but that doesn't always make you a bad person. Because, as somebody said, one of the officers said one day, and I'll never forget it, he said, I have a lot of respect for you and the way you deal with things, because we could just as easily be in your shoes. He said, we don't know. We could get into a fight with whatever, you don't know. Life has a way of surprising you, I suppose, for want of a better way.
But it's the choices, not the person, isn't it?
It is.
We label the choices.
Yeah, I made bad choices.
It's not the person, because
yeah,
our choices and our decisions are impacted by so many external factors.
Yeah, things beyond your control.
Yeah, and until you're in that situation, you can't fully comprehend and understand or be in a position to judge that person.
No, it's like anything with lived experience, and I know we're talking a bit more about the book, and it's opened up opportunities, and you can't ever be, I wouldn't say I know everything about anything, but there are certain things I know more about. I can't sit with my mum and imagine how she felt when she lost a child in between me and my brother. But at the same time, if somebody sits with me and wants to know about prison, they're not going to get it on the level that someone else who's been in prison gets it. That's lived experience. We've all got it. It's just life. But if you can use it for good, like you are with these podcasts, like lots of people do, then lived experience, I think, can open up so many avenues for people they didn't realize they could go down positively. So I got a job in the prison library, and it was about the same time I made my disclosure, and I just fell in love with books again. Read more books in prison than I've probably read in the previous 10 years, and started writing. And I just started writing daily and sharing a few bits and pieces with people. And Meg, the head prison librarian, encouraged me to enter a piece I'd written, which was a competition in 100 words. I had to enter it to a local competition, which I was fortunate enough to get a bronze award. And it sort of went from there, really. So in 7 months, I wrote every day until the day was released, including the day it was released, and came out with it all in a little notebook that I'd won in the competition. So it's still my pride and joy over there. No one gets that unless they were. And yeah, I shared a couple of poems with a couple of friends, and somebody at the time, I was on Facebook, I'm not anymore, but she messaged me and said, you don't have any more of these, do you? That's an odd question. I said, yeah, I wrote a book actually, but they haven't seen it. And she's like, do you mind if I read it? She's a teacher, as it turns out. And she read it and she said, it's so good that you're not having it back till I type it up. And I want you to see where you can go with it. I think it's worthy. I think everybody should read it. So I'd been out for 3 months before I decided to let her even see it. And then from her typing up, within 3 months, it was released on Amazon. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, I did send it to a couple of publishers and had some lovely feedback. One did make an offer, but I wasn't in a position, to afford a hybrid offer, is what they call them. You fund some of the publishing rights. And again, fortune, I suppose, luck, whatever you call it. I was Googling one day trying to find out what Amazon KDP was, and I ended up on a company that was nothing to do with Amazon KDP, but did the bits I couldn't do. And they were really impressed with me, and they offered me I was honest. I said, I can't afford the package you want. And they said, well, we don't, we want to encourage anyone who's got a story to share it. So they waived some of the costs and allowed me to pay in installments. And again, I'm very grateful for my parents. And yeah, so it cost not very much because I had the manuscript. They did the front cover, the bits I couldn't do, to put it on the Kindle platform. And yeah, it went live on the 14th of October. So it's funny enough, I'm talking to you just after it's been live 5 months, and honestly, the reception it's had and the opportunities it's opened up, I'm grateful for that. It just completely blows my mind, A, that anybody wants to read it, but B, that people are so kind about it, the reviews it's had. And it's, it's not, okay, it brings in a little bit of income, but it's not about that. If one person, some of the reviews it's had on Amazon and if I'm having a difficult day, the kindness of those people who reviewed and others, I read that and I think, come on, you can do this. Have a low kind of day, but keep going. So yeah, it's people ask, are you going to do another one? And I'm like, I don't know, because I know everyone says there's a book, you've got a book inside you, but this is so personal to me.
Yeah.
It's not I don't think I could ever and it was not written as a book to sell. It was written, if I ever tried to do another book, I'd be trying to do it as a book, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Whereas this was never intended as a book, which is what makes it so special.
It was such a prominent part of that period in your life.
Yeah. So for pretty much for the last 7 months, I was writing in prison every day. I'd share some of the poems with the prisoner, and that's why the front cover is so poignant, because not exactly, but there's a poem in the book called The Pylon, and I've got a pylon on the front cover because me and the pylon used to have chats, which sounds nuts, but it really helped. And that was the view, obviously with bars. I saw a pylon every day, and he was trapped outside. He can't walk because he's got 4 steel legs, and I was trapped inside. So we chatted. It sounds daft, but it's whatever gets you through, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to plug your book.
Yes.
You got to give it a plug.
Oh yeah, it's called A Short Sentence. Do you want to have it there? I've actually got a copy. It's available on Amazon as a ebook and a paperback. I've also been fortunate enough that a local bookshop where I live now has taken it on, and it's a church bookshop, and they are selling it, and we shall see what happens with it. But yeah, I'm just incredibly proud of it, that people take the time to look at it, to review it, and to talk about it. And as I said, it's opened up. I've been invited to a couple of talks which I've never ever. It's funny because somebody said, "Oh, you've been public speaking all your life." I said, "It's a lot worse than being an assembly, trust me." But I got to work with a group up here where I live now called Headway UK, an incredible group of people who have all suffered acquired brain injuries, and they invited me to talk to them. So they really blew me away, and actually I donate a little bit of every book now I sell back to them.
Wow.
As much because they're just amazing people. And Injust UK, who I'm a peer mentor for, they are very kind about it. They, and if it helps anybody along the way, great. It's taken on a life of its own, but it fits within what I believe Injust is, which is one of the courses I'm going to be doing with them is called Transition and Hope. And we can all transition and hope. Without hope, you can't transition. Without transition, you can't have hope. So yeah, I'm really proud of it. It was a moment, to have it. And then just before I left last April 22, again, the prison librarian encouraged me to enter a national competition, which I'd never have done. So I entered 10 of the poems that I'd written under the title of a short sentence. And I heard late last year that they'd been commended. So I got a certificate and award. And yeah, so they're in the book, those 10. And if people follow me on Twitter, the hashtag is @ashortsentence1 because it was just available. I thought that's really cool. And yeah, but today now I do other things alongside. I'll always write. Writing to me is one of my 5 things that keep me going. But yeah, I'm incredibly proud of it. And it's just a mixture of my own quotes, shorter poems, longer poems, and what I call little blogs. Like I wrote about acceptance. I wrote one about how I felt the day I came face to face with my abuser, when I identified him in a photo. Whatever took my mood that day. But it was through, as you drawing back to something we said at the start, reading other people's journeys really helped me. That's why I suppose, in a way, I didn't do it. There was a book I read. There's a really good author called Matt Haig, and I read a few of his books in prison. One of which I talk about a lot in the book, not a lot, a bit in the book called The Midnight Library, which I won't give the premise away, but has changed my life forever. Brilliant book. But also he wrote a book called the Little Comfort Book, which is a bit more like this, or mine's a bit more like that, I should say. Didn't steal his idea though, if you're listening, Matt. But and I shared the idea with my once it came out, I showed it to my peer mentor lead, and she said it's like Matt Haig's Little Comfort Book, but it's for people in probation or people in the. And I was like, I can't believe you just said that. That was like my fame moment, so yeah, so that's the story behind it. I'm really incredibly proud of it. There are potentially other opportunities. I've been approached by a school to go in and talk to a GCSE group, because they do in RE, they do a restorative justice section at that school. I've had a couple of talks locally I've done up here, and I'll go with it. But what I've also learned is I'll take on what I can when I can. If people say do another book, maybe I will, maybe I won't, but it won't be at the detriment to my own physical and mental health.
It's got to be right for you, isn't it?
It's got to be right for me, and that's where I'm at. And that's why I do right. I've got a 5-point plan of the things I'm doing now. If an opportunity presents itself, first of all, is it one that interests me? And secondly, am I in a position to do it and do it well? Because I do hold myself to high standards. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well, if I can.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's it. But yeah, it's available, as I said, it's available on Amazon as a ebook, or Kindle book, whatever you call it these days, and a paperback. Yeah. So
do you know what, Karl? You said that listening to people's stories is really inspiring, and I think you can put yourself into that mix, into that conversation, because
Absolutely, I think so.
it is inspiring. We've said about journeys, the journey you've been on, the transitions throughout that time, but how open you are to talking about your experiences and to sharing them, in the hope that even helping just that one other person.
Yeah, that's what
And
drives me.
yeah, I think it's a pleasure talking to you about it and listening to what you've got to say. I'm so glad you've come onto the podcast, because your story is so important and it does need sharing, and you share it so well. So I'm sure there's going to be many more offers in the pipeline for you, and many other people trying to get a piece
I'll
of the
always come
pie.
back to you, Lloyd. Yeah, if you want to do another one, I'm always available.
Absolutely, I'd welcome you on again in a heartbeat. But Karl, again, thank you.
No, I'd like to, just if I can quickly finish, thanking you for the opportunity. I do firmly believe in what you're doing, and to me, you are an inspiring person, as are so many others in my life. And all I want to finish with is by thanking everybody who's walked with me, because they've allowed me to be in the privileged position of talking to you today, and for that, I'm grateful from my heart and my mind. And yeah, thank you so very much.
Thank you.